Hello, everybody. Welcome to the You're Too Valuable podcast. My name is Robbie Rainey. You're going to notice that I am the only co-host that's on today. My other two co-hosts, Greg and Jesse, are out. Greg turned a grand 50 years old today, so they're celebrating his birthday in Montana. That's a joke, by the way. Go send him some shit on his email. Greg at you're2val.com. You'll notice that I've got a special guest, somebody that I've known a long time. And today's episode is called Breaking Free from Corporate to CEO. And today we're going to talk about something a lot of you've probably dreamed about, leaving corporate America to become your own boss. So to help us dive into this, we've got Javier is here to talk to us a little bit about what he did to do that. And I've known this guy for years. We even worked in the corporate trenches together. Now he's not only the CEO of his own company, Rockets Interstate Transportation, but he's also an entrepreneurial coach to help others make that same leap. So he's here to talk about developing a strong entrepreneurial mindset and why you should think big, but act bigger. So please welcome my good friend, Javier Carrillo. Javier, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thank you, Robbie. Thanks for having me, man. Pretty excited to talk to your listeners.
Absolutely. Glad to have you here. Today's episode is going to be pretty open and conversational, Jav. I want to talk a little bit about your transition from corporate to you're owning your own business and building your own empire. This episode is really meant to empower people that may have some hesitation or, some fears. We're really going to try to help them break free from that. You sound good to you?
Sounds great to me.
All right, man. Let's go ahead and jump into it. I want to ask you some questions, and I really like to talk and pick your brain as much as possible. You and I, we worked our way through corporate trenches for a long time. We both broke free of that. But I'd like to ask you, what was that moment that you just said, fuck it, like, I'm done. This is the final straw. I'm done with this bullshit. And I'm going to start my own company.
There was two moments, right? The first one was, and this, I was always very competitive. I was always very successful within the corporate world, one of the top performers in the company. And I learned that I had a supervisor that said, you need to text me every morning to say good morning type of conversation. And I'm not used to that. I'm like, what? No, I don't say that kind of thing. Like, let's just get results. Yeah. And I was put on a final, right? Because of something that happened all during COVID. So everything happened like during COVID. I was put on a final and I was shocked. First time in my career that I ever was investigated, put on disciplinary action. Upper leadership was like a little confused of why. And I'm like, you know what? Forget this. Like, I need to do something. And now you got to keep in mind, while I was working at AT, like, I don't have a degree. So I don't have a degree. So, I worked in this corporate America world, and I was put on disciplinary action, talked to upper leadership, and they were confused and I was confused, but they still had to go through the process. You got to support the director at the time. Yeah. And at that point I said, you know what? Like, I don't have a degree, right? What kind of job can I get if I was to get let go from this company? And at that very moment, I'm like, everything's going through your mind. And I was, at the same time, I was like, ready to start my own company. I was learning about it, and I can talk more about that later, but I was ready to start my company. And I kind of just said, you know what? F it. Let's just invest into it and let's start it. We'll see what we can do. I was able to move back to Vegas. And then, I was building my company for a couple of years while still working that 9-to-5 corporate job. And then it wasn't until I moved into a different department and I realized there is no future for me longer in this company. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to go and just go forward in my company. And one of the things that I realized was when you're working at the company and you look at the people that are 2-3 levels higher than you, and I look at how old they are, and I'm like, okay, they're 50, 60, and they're still working here, and they make like $250,000, $300,000 a year. When I look at my future, that wasn't the life that I wanted. Every single upper leadership said, I just want to get my kid through college. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, that's not what I want. I want something more in life. And I realized that the company wasn't it. I quit, I left, and I focused 100% on my company. I was able to scale my company. The funny thing is, and I say it to this day, in 2 years, when I left that corporate world, I took my company from, say, $500,000 to $11 million in revenue in 2 years. And that's what boggles my mind. Like, now I'm like, I wish I would have done it sooner. But at the end of the day, is realizing that there is no future in any corporate world. There is literally no future.
Yeah, it's meant to kind of keep their thumb on you and work you into the ground, never give you any free time, make you feel exhausted all the time. Was there a lot of emotions that you went through, making that decision, Huff?
You know, I devoted over a decade into this
Yeah,
company.
yeah.
There was definitely a lot of emotion. Like I was hurt. I was sad. I was depressed. I was like, I had to hire a life coach to kind of help me navigate through this, pivotal moment in my life because I really love the company. Like I love the company itself. I just
Hmm.
didn't love the
The
leadership,
bullshit, the corporate bullshit.
the
Yeah,
bullshit for sure. And I
yeah,
remember telling one leader, it's like, "Hey, I'm ready to move." And he said, "Well, where are you going?" I'm like, "Well, I want to get promoted. I'm willing to promote." And he's like, "You
yeah.
got a couple of years to accomplish that." And at the same time, the guy next to me
Hmm.
was about to become a director. And I'm like
Yeah,
sitting here and I'm like, what the fuck? This guy?
yeah,
Like this
yeah.
guy, like, I mean, he's good, but he ain't hobby good. Right? And there's like this egotistic mindset that I have because like in order to start your own company, you have to have like a screw like loose, right? You also have to
You gotta
believe
be a
in
little
yourself.
crazy. You gotta be a
You
little
have to
crazy.
believe in yourself. Like I think I'm the greatest thing since slice of bread, right? So
Yeah,
I tell people all the time, you have to believe in yourself. There's like this little cocky arrogance that you got to have because no one else is going to do it for you. You don't just
yeah,
start a company because and you get lucky and you get wealthy, right? You have
yeah.
to like be somewhat crazy. But yeah, like I realized that it's all about a boys club, and I just happen to not be and it's like the flavor of the month, right? There's a
Whoever likes you.
Exactly. It's like, do you have the right friends? And the worst thing is that I saw a really, really good friend that I respect to death and I love her to death get let go. And I guarantee you that 90% of the people that knew this individual were shocked.
I knew that individual. I was shocked.
And I'm like, this is like the best person. Like, and now that that person got replaced by what I think is a laughing joke, right? And it's just honestly it's depressing. That's why I tell people like it's good. Don't get me wrong. Working in the corporate world does teach you a lot of valuable skills, leadership, and how to get a following and how to like disciplinary action, like discipline people. So you do learn some valuable skills that you can't learn in school, right?
For sure.
Same time, I think it's like a stepping stone. If you're if you're a hungry individual and you're successful within the corporate world, to a certain extent, you have to take that leap, right? Take that leap and just freaking do it. But yeah, man, I mean, I just laugh and I sometimes regret that it took me over a decade to realize this.
Listen, I'm right there with you. Hav, you and I, we kind of like worked our way up together. We were always really highly regarded in our organization, and we kind of ended up going our separate ways. And I feel like we made the same decision like within the same 6-month period. And I felt those same emotions, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna fucking do it. I'm gonna make this move. I'm gonna leave the company that I've been with for over a decade. I've dedicated my life to. It felt like we really worked hard and they gave us that freedom until we hit that certain executive level position. And then it was almost like they put us on a leash and put us outside on the stake like they do dogs that get a little too old, and they're like, you just wait your turn. And I felt like I was just shackled all the time, and I felt like everything, like all the knowledge that I brought to the organization, I felt like they didn't want to hear it anymore. And it was basically like, yeah, your opinion doesn't matter. Everything is, what we say, and you're going to do what we say. It was at a point where if they told me my new job was going to be in Cleveland, Ohio, I would have no choice. And to me, that it felt so managey that I just had to go. Now, I want to ask you really quickly, the why behind your leap. So, from your perspective, what are the biggest constraints for people that work in corporate America? What would you say is broken with the system in the corporate world that should push people to seek something more? What would you say?
Boys club,
Yeah.
right? I think that's like the biggest thing is like you don't have to be good, but as long as you have a friend,
Hmm.
you know, you're gonna get to the next level. I think that's what's broken in any corporate world because I know people that have spent well over 2, 3 decades in this
For
organization
sure.
and they never got promoted,
Yeah.
right? And it's always about what are you willing to sacrifice for this company? And a lot of the time you're sacrificing your family. And
Your health, your mindset.
the fact that a company puts you in a position where you have to literally decide between your family and a paycheck to the next level, which, to be realistic, when you make over $100,000 a year, I feel that it's the same as making 70,000 a year, because all that happens is you just buy a newer car, a nicer house, and that's it. Like you're still broke.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah. And then the taxes are heavier too, because it's almost like you're making the same exact amount. And it's almost like you have to work yourself into that next position to make it even worth it. And it's just a constant rat race. And I'm glad that you made the move. You're doing great things, man. I'm really proud of you. You know, you and I have had business interactions after we left the company, and we've got some things in the works. But I'd like to ask you, you do entrepreneurial coaching. For someone who's only ever worked a 9 to 5, what is the most important mental shift that they have to make to break free from that corporate way of thinking?
I remember when I was in college, right? Now, I never graduated, and I said that I don't have a degree. But I remember when I was in college, there's a specific class where they make you do like a visual board. It's like probably a word for it. But essentially, you take a board, you put a picture of what you want your future to look like. When
Yeah.
you put everything up there on this visual board, you have to kind of like think about, is what I'm doing right now going to help me get that, and in what timeline,
Yeah.
right? That shit does not add up,
Yeah.
right? Like, I remember looking at this, and there was a VPGM, right? And I'm like, this guy doesn't even have what I want, and he's 60 years old, right? He should
Yeah.
have already been retired. And that's what kind of like helped me realize, like, Javier, this is not adding up. Something needs to change. Now, I didn't have the answer at the time, but in my mind, 1 + 1 = 2. And this shit was not
Yeah.
adding up. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like one of the things that I tell entrepreneurs is, the sooner you realize that, it doesn't matter if you don't have a business, but the sooner you realize that it's not adding up, then you should start thinking about, okay, what can I do? What am I good at? Because keep in mind, the company that I started, and I now own multiple companies, but the company that I initially
Yeah.
started was trucking. I don't have a license to drive a semi truck. I don't even know how to turn one on and like put it in drive, right?
Yeah.
But one thing that I do have is the ability to make relationships.
People
So
skills for sure.
100%. And then, so that's kind of like what led into where I'm now. Now, it wasn't like a up to the right path on, you were to put on a graph like
Yeah.
this. But
Yeah.
say it's like this, but at the same time, it's going this way, even though it's like this. And you don't realize that every small little step is like a huge step in business, right?
For sure.
So I tell people is, if it's not adding up, start thinking about, okay, what else can I do? And the answer is always going to be business.
Yeah. Yeah. And I I was really surprised that you started a trucking company. I didn't know that that was really your interest. I was shocked when I learned that, but I was super proud of you. You know that I always cheered you on. What got you, like, what made you focus on that specific industry? If you don't mind me asking, this is a really great way for people that kind of, have the idea of starting their own business, but they have no idea where to go. This is a great example of how you could maybe do something that you've never even thought of before.
No, 100%. Now, I'll tell you this. I moved to another state. So I was living in Arizona at the time, right?
Mhm.
This little town, well, it's a city, but it's small as hell. Tucson,
Yeah.
Arizona.
Yeah.
Most of the people
Tucson.
in Arizona, Tucson,
You
Tucson,
can't even spell it right.
but most of the people there are like, there's definitely like a huge Hispanic, like it's right next to the border, right?
Yeah.
Uh, a lot of people own small little companies out there. A lot of small little companies. And one of my employees, now keep in mind, I'm like an area manager, associate director at the time. And then
Yeah.
there's like, the store manager, and there's like the assistant, and then there's the rep. I
Yeah.
had a rep that started a trucking company with his brother. And I was
Wow.
like shocked. I was like completely shocked. I'm like, you're like this many levels beneath me. Nothing against
Mhm.
it. But in my mind, I'm like, and you have a company? That's freaking amazing. I love that. Like, tell me more. And for no BS, for about 8 months, 9 months, I was his student. I would literally drive to that store just to talk to
I
him about
love that.
this company. Now, you got to remember, you can always learn from people above you and people technically like in a couple levels down in at least in the corporate world, right? But I'm like learning from this kid about the business. Okay, what's good? What's bad? How much money can you make? And then at the same time, I'm talking to now like my mind's open into trucking. I'm like, I realize that I have relatives that are in this world. They're drivers. They don't own their company, they're drivers. I'm asking them, and they're like, well, it's hard, but you can make money. And at the same time, I'm like, okay, how much money do you make? Because I know one of my cousins has nice houses, nice cars, a lot of toys. And I'm like, how can you afford that in trucking? If you can afford that in trucking, I wonder what your boss had, right? And so when that happened, it just kind of like the stars aligned, is what I say. I bought a real estate property in Vegas. The tenant stopped paying me, so I ended up selling because I was living in Arizona. I didn't want to come back and forth trying to collect rent. So I sold it. I came up with like $60,000 in cash, like,
Yeah.
right? I called a couple of friends like, hey, do you guys want to invest in this business? Let's go 50-50. Because I was scared. I'm not gonna lie. I was definitely scared as shit because this is like a new world and I don't know nothing about business.
Yeah.
All my friends were like, no, like, I want to know more. I'm like, I can't tell you more. Like, this is as much as I know. Let's take a leap of faith. They all said no. I asked my brother, and my brother thought I was joking. He's like, yeah, bro, whatever. I got your back. The one day I call my brother, hey, I found a truck. It's like $40,000. Wire me half. And he's like, are you serious? I was like, yeah, that's serious. He literally wired me within an hour, wired me the funds. I bought the truck. And the funny part is that I had a truck sitting for a month and I didn't even know how to register it. Right. But
But you
you know,
you got the asset. You got the asset, dude.
now I have a truck. I'm like in California at the time, like we're on a trip, and I'm like, dude, how are we gonna get this thing up and running? Like I don't even know how to hire an employee, you know?
That's
So
awesome.
you don't know all the answers. This is what I love. In business, you don't have to know all the answers, right?
Yeah.
You Google,
Yeah.
a lot of these things. And
Fall on
then
your face a couple times.
but you just keep moving forward, and next thing you know, like it's funny. There was a point in time where we made $40,000 of profit in 1 month. I was so freaking happy with like we had one truck at the time, and it was crazy that I made that kind of money. Now, there's obviously the lie of business. You don't just get rich,
Yeah.
right? That next month,
Yeah.
the tip works down, and I give the $40,000 back, right?
Yeah.
But it gave me like it. What it made me realize is, Javier, you never made $40,000 that fast,
Yeah.
right? Once you figure
Yeah.
out this fucking company or this
Yeah.
business model,
You were
you
used to making that a core. You were used to making that a.
dude, seriously,
Yeah.
and that's before taxes, you
Yeah.
know? So, and then in the way, like, I'll tell you that. So when that happened, it's like one of those things where my head was racing and I was like, Javier, you need to like leave this freaking corporate world. Like, if you can buckle down, right, you can make something happen. But at the same time, spaghetti mind. You don't have like, there's no like one, two, three, four. It's like one negative A, B, C, and then you're back to two, right? Like,
Yeah.
there is no like clear path into business. But I'll tell you this, the sooner you do it, the sooner you fall on your face, the sooner you keep going, you're bound to fucking make this shit happen. Because think about it,
Yeah.
how many times do we make mistakes in the corporate world, saying the
All
wrong
the
thing,
time. All the
right?
time.
And we still got promoted, which means like now it's like taking that model, putting it in business, right? And it's the same model. Like, you will fail, but as long as you keep going, you're going to succeed as long as you don't give up.
Oh yeah, one of my favorite quotes is from Michael Jordan. I've failed over and over and over again. I've taken 9,000 shots and I've missed the game winning shot. That saying that to me is like exactly what you're talking about. You have to be willing to take a chance on yourself. You have to be willing to take a risk, and it's not always going to be pretty. Sometimes it's going to get really fucking ugly. I had a very similar approach in starting a business. I was walking away from a, $200,000 a year job, kids, family to think about. These were things that were really, really stressful and anxiety inducing. But I finally made the decision to pull the trigger and make it happen. And I'm so glad that I did. I feel like my mindset is just in such a better place. Overall, my health is in a better place. I just feel like I have freedom. Like, if I want to go live in New Zealand for 6 months, I can fucking do it. You know what I mean? Like, and I can run my business from anywhere. I love that idea. That to me is like what life is meant to be lived. So I'm really glad that you took that risk too. I want to ask you, because this kind of segues into what people are most concerned about. Leaving that security of a paycheck. What's one piece of brutally honest advice that you give your clients, about the challenges of being a business owner that they don't see coming? Okay,
There,
yeah.
there's a piece where you said that there is that comfort level, right, of the nine
Yeah,
to five.
yeah.
Like, when you work, keep in mind, when the company is using you as a quote unquote corporate slave, right?
We were called resources by HR and higher ups for sure.
But you're being used by this company, and they're
Yeah.
taking advantage of you, right?
Hmm.
Even after you quote unquote clock out, and this is what I hate. You become a salary employee, there's no clocking out. You should have known. You should have been available. But
Yeah.
you work this, like they're working you, so now you need to work the system. So what I tell
Hmm.
every single entrepreneur that wants, or entrepreneur at the time, right? Because they're still not
Yeah.
entrepreneur.
I love that. Entrepreneur. I like that. That's
There's
cool.
like there's that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
until you really like jump in, and then even once you
Yeah, for
become
sure.
an entrepreneur, then you have to be a serial entrepreneur, right? Because everyone's
Yeah.
an entrepreneur. But I tell people this: work your 9 to 5, but at the same time, take that time to build on your company. Because even though you work 9 to 5, you're not like this all freaking
Yeah.
day, right? You're not.
Yeah.
There's breaks. There's like things you're BSing. And I remember working this corporate world, and at the same time, I was booking loads for my company, right? It would take me like 10 minutes, right? I tell people, learn how to, you know, use them as much as they use you, and then slowly start building, right? Start building, start building, start building. And then one of the questions that I used to ask because I was scared is, at what point do you leave the 9 to 5 to jump into the business? And there was this, you see the most beautiful thing that happened to me. I went to a restaurant near the corporate office, and I was sitting by the bar. I wasn't drinking, but I was sitting by the bar eating lunch. And there was this older gentleman. Now, you know me, I'm not very social, right? Unless I
Yeah.
know I'm not very social. This gentleman wanted to have a conversation. I can tell that he wanted to kind of talk. And he's like, "Hey, how's your day going?" And I was like, "Hey, great. How's yours?" Stuff like that. I'm like, "What do you do?" He owns his own company. He's like an inventor or something like that. He has like
Hmm.
patents. And I'm like, "Oh shit. Okay, now I want to definitely talk to you. You're
Yeah.
you're where I
Piqued
want
your
to be."
interest. You're like, all right, let's talk.
Let's talk, hell yeah. And I asked the gentleman, and I said, "Hey, can I ask you a question? At what point do you leave your 9 to 5 to focus on your business? Like, what happened to you?" And what he told me was, "Can I be completely honest with you?" Now, keep in mind, he's an older man that has no buffer. Like, he doesn't,
Yeah.
he doesn't have to care to hurt your
No
feelings.
shits were given. No shits were
Right?
given.
And he's like, "Your generation is like, you guys are such a fucking pussies." And I was like, what the fuck? All right, it's funny to me. And he's like, "Look, are you making more on your business, or are you making enough to be able to support your lifestyle?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." He's like, "Then do it. What are you waiting for? Like, what magical thing needs to happen for you to like just go for it, right? If you were successful in the corporate world, you're not going to be successful in business. You've already in a faster time, you're making more money than you have your whole life so far." And when he said that, it like stuck with me. Like, look, I'm 5 years into the owning my business. But when he said that, I thought about it and thought about it and thought about it. And I was like, you know what? He is right. Well, why am I so scared?
Yeah.
Like, I can always apply at another corporate job. I can always move back up. I can always make $100,000 plus a year. But
Yeah.
I have an opportunity of a lifetime, and I need to just take it.
Yeah.
Right.
Take the
So
risk. Take the
you have
leap.
to take the risk. Now, go ahead and ask your question again, because I wanted to touch on that, and then I'll answer your question.
No. So, like, what's one piece of brutally honest advice that you give your clients about the challenges of being a business owner that they might not foresee, like when they're conceptualizing their ideas or their dreams that they might not see coming? Like, what is the biggest piece of brutally honest advice that you'd give?
It's what I hate with anybody that wants to jump in business, and this is what I tell them. Everyone says, "Javier, I want to be like you. I want to I want to leave XYZ. I want to start my own company. I want to make money." And then I'm like, "All right, cool. Are you going to like focus?" And next thing I know is they're planning a trip to go to California, and they're broke, right? That pisses me off. Or they're more focused on a freaking football game. And I tell
Yeah.
people this all the time. I was like, you guys realize, and look, don't quote me. I don't know where I heard this from. I don't know where I read it. It could have been 48 Laws of Power. I don't remember. But there was something that I heard or read or something like that says, in old times, the reason why people didn't overtake the government at hand was because the government or the emperor or whatever created an arena to create games,
Hmm.
to keep people focused on a game. So instead
Yeah.
of focusing on creating wealth or taking over the power, they focus on a game. And I tell people this all the time. That is your sports. NFL. I'm like, you're not making money off of watching Sunday football every single freaking Sunday. You're not in a position, like, if you're have the luxury of having a shit ton of money, then do it by all means, right? But if you're not there, you're more focused on, you have your 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. Say that's what your shift is. Then you have kids, right? Things like that. You have the freaking game on Sunday, and then you got to have a day for the kids on a Saturday. When do you focus on your business? you have to fucking sacrifice, right? Well, if you're not willing to sacrifice 2, 3 years, but you're willing to sacrifice for a freaking game, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're sacrificing your life for your future instead of sacrificing a moment in time for your future. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? There,
It
that
100% does. It 100% does. And that is actually a saying. It's like people get distracted with the games and the bread. And ultimately I'll say that as a business owner, I can't even tell you the last time I watched a sporting event. I read the recaps. I love sports, but that was the first thing to go for me. So I love that you bring that up. You have to be willing to dedicate enough time to see your baby grow is really my philosophy. And I think that you really touch on an important point. Corporate America, and I hate to say this, I like to almost align them as like the drug dealer. Like they keep you coming back with just enough salary to get you by, and they work you so much that you're so tired that all you can think about is next payday, and you don't focus on building your own empire. And they keep you working for the man. So you touched on a really, really, really great point. I think that any aspiring business owners, they're going to have to make sacrifices. They're going to have to take the risks. They're going to have to be willing to fall on their face a couple of times, just like we did when we learned how to ride bikes as kids. You took one of the training wheels off and you'd still fall off, and then you learned how to balance a little bit better, and then you took it off, you got all confident, and you fall on your fucking face and cry a couple times, and you get back up on the bike and you try again until you learn how to do it, right? So that's a great way to give advice to some of the aspiring business owners out there. Now, I want to talk about some of the payoff that you've gotten. So beyond the obvious, obviously freedom, working whatever hours that you really want to. Obviously, you probably work more. I know that I work more than I did, but at the same time, like, it doesn't feel as exhausting. Like, I get excited about doing it. What's the biggest difference for you between working for the man and being your own boss?
But I'll tell you, this is the biggest realization that I had, right? When I was working the corporate world, I have 3 boys, 12, 11, and a 4-year-old.
You have twins, right?
Well, they're Irish twins, or is that what it's called? Like 11 months
Yeah,
apart.
yeah. Okay, got it. Okay.
So I have, but I was so focused on providing for the family at the time that I sacrificed, like, really, like, raising my kids, like really like bonding with them, and like just, nurturing them, because I was so focused on paying the bills, right? At the time. When I out my 4-year-old, he has had the luxury of having me available, and I would bring him to my office whenever I wanted to. Like, I actually had like a nice office. I created like a playroom area for kids. I told all my employees, like, hey, feel free to bring your kids. Like, they can be here all they want. Like, I don't care. We're not going to worry about childcare.
Hell yeah, I love that, dude.
I would bring my kid, and they would be loud as hell. It didn't matter. But I was able to, like, take him with me. I was able to take him to the gym with me. I was able to bring him home, buy him snacks, and we spent every single day together, right? And you probably can hear him in the background upstairs screaming. But that is what my oldest kids didn't have. So
Yeah,
what I realized is, and I make more money now than I did in the corporate world. So even though, yes, you're right, I do work 24/7, but there is a flexibility of where I'm at and who I have to report to, which technically I still report to my clients, but like you said, I can be in Belize, I can be in Hawaii, I can be in Florida, right? But my kids are seeing me. If my
yeah,
kids have to get picked up from school, I don't have to ask for permission, right?
yeah.
So I think that's the biggest realization of the corporate world versus working for the man than owning your own company. It's like, yeah, you work 24/7, but you do have more flexibility in your life and your
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah. You don't constantly feel like you're being monitored or micromanaged. And if a client texts you at 11 o'clock at night, it's almost like you're excited to have those conversations with those clients because you provide them with great service. That could potentially lead to, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in revenue in the next, 10 years, just based on the experience that you provide. So I definitely think that that's very freeing. And I definitely agree with you. Just the level of micromanagement in corporate America, you talk about it, and we used to have like corporate cars, and you couldn't drive anybody, and like you had to be certain places at certain times, and text me good morning, get the fuck out of here with that nonsense. So you gotta text me in the morning and they're gonna put you on a final for that. Man, I'd be lighting the building on fire.
Yo, seriously, and that's like the it's crazy to think that way because I even this, right? They had like unrealistic like expectations of you. I remember where, it's a slow month, right? Say it's a slow month and everyone's kind of struggling, right? Say right before, I don't know, right before taxes. Like we'll use that as
Yeah.
an example. And they still want you to hit a number that's unrealistic. Now, in their mind, because I've been in both sides of the room, right? I've been in one where I'm in like I'm the guy reporting and trying to get the results, and then I've been the guy trying to get other people to get me results regardless, right? And we have had conversations where we say, "Hey, I know it's a slow month, but let's press them so they can push a little bit harder to get us a little bit better numbers." And I remember like it made me realize that hey, these guys don't really care. They don't care about you, but they're gonna put so much freaking stress on you that you take home and you're like constantly thinking about how can I get this extra sale, right? How can I drive more? Even though it's not possible realistically, right? But there's so much pressure. And they would have you like walk around the store and touch every single product and do a demonstration of every single product. And it's just because you're trying to get other people to buy in. I think that alone is probably like one of the things why I hated the corporate world because it's like pressure for no reason.
Yeah. Unnecessary. It's to keep you just fearing the system, fearing losing your job. You're constantly living in fear that you're going to mess something up. The higher up you go, you feel like there's more eyes on you. I definitely agree with what you're saying, and it definitely, it always felt like the higher up you went, it was almost like people in executive president level, positions, they kind of liked people in the company fighting each other. Like they got a kick out of it, and I felt like there was constant just conflict that was created in that corporate culture to just entertain, executive leaders in the company. And looking back, it's almost like a narcissistic feeling, in my opinion. I definitely think, that it's something that, people don't really subliminally know is happening, but when it is happening, it's so front and center. It's so obvious that they do these things to always make you feel like you're being watched, to make you feel like you could lose your job at any moment. And, I definitely think that starting your own business, it alleviates that anxiety. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I mean, it definitely does. Like, you don't get me wrong. There's still anxiety you have when you're running your company.
Oh, for
It
sure.
is different. It is different, right? Because in business, it's end of the world every day. At least you create that for yourself. In the world, it's like you have the anxiety, you have the stress, but it's more because they can take it away at any moment. If you don't kiss the right cheek, right, at the right time, if you don't say the
Yeah.
right words at the, what I'm saying, like there is that, and then they would do like these random like BS 4 a.m. calls or 5 a.m. meetings, something like that, just to put you in a position where you hated it so bad that you don't want to be in those again. That it even puts you in a position where you have to do unethical things, right? And that's what people don't realize. The upper
Yeah.
leadership always wants you to do unethical things to get the results, but
They'll
then
never
when
say it, but they want
they'll
you
never
to.
say it, it's one of those things that's like,
Yeah.
it's one of those
Yeah.
like winks.
Yeah.
Like if you
Yeah.
get caught, hey, that's on you. We run by the I don't know, my policy or whatever the hell it is, right? And I'm like, these motherfuckers, dude. And
Yeah.
I've seen so many good people get fired that they're not unethical. Like they don't do these things, but they were pushed so hard that they felt like they had to do these things. And then upper leadership would even teach you how to do it. And when an investigation would happen, they would like, everyone got scared. They would turn a blind eye. They're like, I never said anything. Hey, keep your mouth hush. You won't get in trouble. Then they get terminated.
Yeah.
And now when they
Yeah.
try to speak up, it's retaliation. So I think that I strongly believe that, bro, it's fucking working for a corporate world is like evil.
Yeah,
It's
no,
gonna ruin your life.
me and my co-host talk about this all the time. And when you vocalize that you don't feel comfortable, then there's a target on your back. This was actually a topic of last week's episode, and I will say that corporate America, there's a lot of shady shit that happens. They have their policy, and then they have the, behind the scenes policy, and they'll have your back until they don't. And all it takes is one little mess up for the company to turn their back on you. And they encourage you to make those unethical behaviors without, verbalizing. So I tell people in corporate America, because I coach career professionals all the time. If you're being encouraged to do something, get that shit in writing. Get it in writing, because they won't write it to you. And if they don't write it to you, it never happened, because the company, they say, if you didn't document it, it didn't happen, right? So employees can kind of take back that the ownership of their jobs. If their boss or their leadership or their supervisor is not willing to put it in an email, that conversation never took place. So, but yeah, you definitely feel like if you don't do it, you're going to lose your job, and you're going to be, going to the unemployment line making pennies, like fractions of pennies on the dollar that you were making in the position that you were in. So you play that fine line, and it makes you feel slimy. It makes you feel really fucking slimy, having to work through those types of conditions. I want to ask you, what would you give somebody that's coming out of high school that, is kind of figuring out what their way is, and they're thinking about starting their own business? If you could go back to 18-year-old Javi and you could do things all over again, not go the corporate America world, what would you change, Huff?
Look, there's two types of people out there, right? It's like there's not like a one clear path to success. That's what I tell everybody. That's even because I like going to speak at high schools and things like that. Like I like to speak to the youth, and not every youth is going to follow the path that Javier followed, right? I tell them this: if you like education and you really want to go to college, get a degree in something that's going to be worth something. Don't get an arts degree, right? Now, don't get me wrong. I could be wrong, okay? But I tell people, don't do hospitality, at least in Vegas. A lot of hotels out here, and a lot of people go to school to get hospitality degrees. My brother has a hospitality degree, and he's law enforcement. That shit doesn't even go hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
Don't do something like that. Go into some sort of like accounting, finance. Don't even do coding, because freaking technology now is going to replace them, right?
AI is going to replace you. Yeah.
AI will replace a lot of people, but I say you can go into like accounting, finance, like know a skill that, like, I don't have a degree in finance or anything like that. I had to hire a fractional CFO to come teach me how to run finances in my company, right? Which it was very, very useful. So it's better if you have a skill into business. So definitely pursue that. Or the other one is if it was Javier and I was 18, I would tell myself, jump into sales. Like, learn sales as early as possible as you can, because that's the hardest thing in the world, is being able to go in front of a stranger, present them a solution, and trying to figure out if it's really going to make sense for them. Because in business, that's all you do. Every single fucking person you talk to can be a potential client, right? So you're going to have to learn how to convince people. And it's not so much like convincing them because they don't want it. It's convincing them or helping them understand why they want this, right? And so sales is going to be probably like, if it's not a degree, right, which that's not my path, I would have gotten to sales a lot sooner. It took me, I was 22 when I jumped into sales. I could have done it at 18.
Yeah.
Right.
And, you actually touch on a really important point. Like, I feel like when we were kids, we were always sold on the dream of like working in computers. Get to know computers. It's going to be the way of the future. And I feel like we kind of over-rotated as a generation. And I feel like we stopped doing the necessary trades, like, dry cleaning, like plumbing, like things that you can literally start your own business, and most people don't realize it, but those types of trades, if you own your own business and you do it right, you can make fucking millions of dollars.
100%.
And you know what I mean? Like, these are things that I think that it's almost like our society has looked down on it so much, but they're so necessary. Don't be afraid to take the path, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel to be successful. I feel like we've been taught, like, you've got to invent the next big yada, yada, yada to be successful, right? Like, that's not the case. You can be successful going and buying, the baby boomer generation, they're about to start selling their businesses. That's a great entryway into getting into business, right? baby boomers run, like shoe repair, clothing. What do they call those? The tailors. Like, these are things that our generation isn't doing. There's not enough of them out there, and I highly encourage people to look at it big picture. Even if it doesn't have a nice big shiny association with it, don't be afraid to look into it, because you could really build yourself a great future doing that.
You know
That's
what
my advice.
No, you know what I love to that, and I'll piggyback off of what you're saying, is these baby boomers, they're not even selling their fucking companies, right? They're
Yeah,
giving them away. Their kids don't
yeah,
want them. I had a
yeah,
guy, and I bullshit you not. I went to Ohio. My brother and I bought a house in Ohio in Dayton. We brought a guy out who was a realtor, and he also was in property management. He's an old guy. He's probably like 65, 70 years old, something like that. Now, I'm talking to this guy, and I don't know nothing about him, right? I'm just kind of like a realtor, just trying to sell this or whatnot. We go walk through whatnot. We go have lunch, and we're having more conversation. He ends up telling me that he has like 700 doors, and I'm like, oh shit, you're not small, like.
yeah,
And so I'm asking him like, hey, what's your just question? Like, I'm asking question like, hey, when are you planning to retire? Who's taking over your company? He said, my kids want nothing to do with my company. They're like, one's a doctor and the other one's like something else with in tech. They want nothing to do with my company. I don't have any employees that actually are smart enough to actually take over the company and see a vision with it. So honestly, I don't know, maybe sell it. And I'm like, well, hey, I'd be interested in like talking more. Like, I'm interested in your company. And then I brought it up through conversation because he's asking questions as well, like, what do you do? What are you guys about? Stuff like that.
yeah.
I asked him like, hey, you ever thought about like doing like a seller finance where I'll pay you a certain amount every single month forever. I will fire none of his staff because he obviously loves his staff, and I'll just drive it to 1,400
Yep.
doors.
Yep.
And the fact that he said yes, he's like, I'll be very, very open to that. As long as you don't fire my employees, and if you can scale it out and
Take
pay
care of
me
my
out,
people.
right?
Mhm.
You can have the company. That I was shocked. This is a multi-million-dollar company, I'm going to assume, right? I just had to go live in Ohio. I'm not going to go live in Ohio. I let the opportunity go. But it helped me realize that a lot of people out there built like work a company their whole life, and they never knew how to take it to the next level, right? I give them credit for starting it, but they cap themselves, right? If a young buck comes in with a like ambitious as great like and driven and wants to like freaking make a lot of money, he can take that company that's already established and just scale, right? And you can take it for free. You can take it for a percentage of the ownership, right? So you don't have to necessarily buy a company. You don't need money. You just need to have the right mindset, the vision, the hunger,
Yeah.
the grit to just fucking grab that bull from the horns and just
Make it happen. Yeah.
I've like now that I consult, a lot of people want to consult for ownership, where they want me to kind of like come in as a partner, like a strategic partner. They'll give me a percentage of the company as long as I can help them drive it. So I wanted just to piggyback off of your point is you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? You just have to take an idea and just push it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, I think that there's a really big opportunity for us to kind of get back into the things that AI won't replace, and a lot of people, like I said, they over rotated and they went to these fancy corporate tech jobs, and you're seeing layoffs en masse, and people that, were making way more money than they should have been, like $300,000-$400,000 a year in corporate tech. And then they got laid off, not knowing why, because it wasn't, they basically developed their own replacement. And that's like, they didn't see it coming, man. You know what I mean? Like they
Yeah.
didn't see it because corporate kind of took them a different direction. They got them excited for the Kool-Aid, and these people were developing their own replacements, not even knowing what the hell they were doing. And, it's do things that make you happy. Don't forget to take care of yourself. Don't forget to do things that bring you joy, things that bring you excitement. I would say this, and I work with, I volunteer for high schools and trade schools, and I coach some of the students for free. I don't charge them to bring them into society. And I tell them this, if you have ideas of grandeur, you typically surround yourself with like-minded people. Avi, you and I have kind of always kept in touch, even though we haven't been with the company for a certain period of time. And you surround yourself with like-minded people. Don't be afraid to have those conversations about going into business together. go work that 9 to 5 job, put together $10,000, $15,000. You've got 3 or 4 friends that pool that together. You've got a great investment with no interest, right? And you can just deposit it into a bank account and ultimately work your way into an empire that comes to fruition within 10 to 20 years. So I certainly agree that there's, a lot of opportunities out there. I really think that you've touched on some really, really great points. What would your advice be to people that have attempted to start businesses, have failed, and never tried again?
I'll tell you this. The word fail, let's touch it lightly, right? Because you don't
Yeah,
fail. Like failure is death,
yeah.
is the way I look at it. And
It's
if you die,
learning.
obviously you're done,
Yeah.
right? It's a part of the journey, right? We have had, like, at least I have had multiple different jobs with multiple different companies. Whether I quit or, I got let go because of stupid points or whatnot. I didn't fail in life. So even in business, you don't fail. It's just kind of like one of those stepping, like, these obstacles that you got to encounter to build your backbone, so the next time you know what not to do in order to keep it pushing forward. That's one. Number two, what I tell people is, when you're building a company, yes, you're making cash, but that's not your cash. It's called working capital to reinvest in the company. So the money has to come in and just kind of do one of these, right?
Yeah.
Keep the company
Yeah.
moving forward. And it's not until maybe 2, 3 years. I tell people, don't touch the money for 3 years, right? And
Hmm.
at that point, you can start taking a little nugget. But there's enough cash in the company for it to continue to move forward, because there will be a downturn or whatever. All these companies are going to have that. But I think that's one of the biggest things is, you don't fail. Just realize that you did something wrong. What can you not, like, what's going to
Learn
prevent you
from
from
it.
doing,
Yeah.
right? Learn from it. And then, and I'll touch on this. I tell people this: be ambitious, don't be greedy, right? In business, I see a lot of people fail because they want everything for themselves, but they have nothing, right? And I see that all the time. Like, people are like, we're gonna do 60-40, but yet the company makes $0. And the biggest argument is about splitting $0. And I'm like, you guys are
Yeah.
stupid as hell, right?
Yeah.
Work the freaking company. Like, one of you is gonna fit a certain role, right? If you're the CEO, you might be the CEO right now, but you're really more like an COO, an operator. And then there's someone else that has a vision that probably works less, but that's the one that's pushing the company in a certain direction, and you just are the better operator. Doesn't mean that's bad, but at the same time, it's like, be ambitious, don't be greedy, you never fail, just keep pushing forward. Because remember, back to that vision board, there's that dream, right? It's like, as long as you keep moving fucking forward, you're eventually going to figure out how to accomplish that. It could be when you're 50, I don't know, right? But the sooner you start, the sooner you're going to get there, right? And it's like, I'm 34 years old, right? I've made more money in the last, 3 years than I ever did in my whole life put together, right? You're not like, just because you're 24 years old and you feel like you're failing, you're not. I didn't start my
Yeah.
company technically until I was 29 and still wasn't making any money, right?
Yeah.
I didn't quit the world until I was like 32, I don't know, or something like that. So just don't give up, keep pushing. Because I started multiple little stupid little companies in the beginning. I started with vapes when vaping was a thing, and I was literally flipping $20 to make 30, right?
Yeah.
And so that was no future, or at least I didn't think it was, right? But I did do
Yeah.
it. But it wasn't like I was like, it's just like, you try a bunch of little stupid little things,
Yeah.
and it's a matter of time for you to figure out what works for you. And
Yeah.
then once you
Throw some
figure it,
thing throw some things at the wall. Obviously do it intentionally, but don't be afraid to take a risk. And I love that. I think that we've just been so conditioned societally to, you're never going to succeed doing that. You're never going to succeed doing that. You're never and doubt just tune out the haters. That's my best advice, and some of the advice that I give to some of my young and up and coming career professionals that are kind of considering if they want to go the corporate direction or if they want to go, the start their own business direction. Tune out the haters. People are going to try to bring you down, and people want to see you succeed, but only so much. And they'll start to do things that subliminally can technically bring you down. Surround yourself with the right people. That's one of the biggest pieces of advice that I can give. If you surround yourself with people that are constantly trying to tear you down, it's time to reconsider who you've got in your inner circle. Do you have any advice about networking with like-minded people?
yeah, I'll tell you this. Okay, it depends what level you're in business, okay? If you're if you meet someone that has, say, 5 years in business, they pretty well off for themselves, which I did. I met a couple of people like that, and now they're my business partners in the company that I own in Belize.
Yeah.
I walked in as a student, right? Even though my company was making millions of dollars, I was still very humble and I was listening to them. And then the one that speaks the least is the one that technically is the smartest, is the way that I've heard that before, right? So I didn't want to come across and start hyping myself up because then they're going to see right through me. I
Yeah.
was very humble, but put yourself in the right rooms, right? Don't be
Yeah.
afraid of saying hello. And now I will say this, okay? Learn how to fucking dress. People think that that doesn't matter. It freaking matters, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like, you don't have to wear expensive ass clothes, right? But what I'm saying is look presentable. Iron your freaking shirt, right? Be a student, like learn more. Yes, there's a time for you to be, to speak, but when you have people that are already fucking doing it, learn from them. Like, they could care, these could care less. Like, I'll give you one example. If a 23-year-old comes to me raggedy as fuck telling me that he's going to start a business and he's already going to be successful, I'm going to fucking tune him out, right? Like, I don't, even though I hope he does succeed, I just, like, I know for a fact that anything I say, he's like, oh, I already knew that. And then and as a guy, I'm just going to stay quiet versus him asking questions like, hey, how did you start? Tell me about some challenges you've gone through. Like, want to learn from me because I have more experience from you. Doesn't mean that I'm better than you, but it means that once you learn these certain little nuggets, you're going to be able to catapult me and become more successful a lot sooner. But
Yeah.
learn how to be in the right rooms, learn how to be a student first, right? And then take everything you're hearing and implement it. You don't have to do exactly what these people did, right? But you have to take a lot of the things they have done and implement in your own. That's one of, like, the biggest ones. And that's honestly what has helped me catapult myself in owning multiple different companies, is that approach. I present myself well, I dress well, I'm a student, right? And I tell my story, and I tell people this. I don't have a degree and I'm very vocal about it, right? Doesn't mean I'm an idiot. It's just I just didn't think education was
You
the
didn't
route.
take that path, and that's okay.
So, no degree, come from immigrant parents. I consider myself a hardcore conservative, right? I like to mind my own business. English is technically my second language. I was born in the US and we were poor as hell, right? This is my like literally my poor as hell. So this is my starting grounds. And I've been able to have what I have because I'm a fucking student. And I learned my lesson when I was at AT&T. I was cocky, arrogant because I was like,
Yeah. No,
okay,
you're good.
working in the corporate world, I was very cocky and arrogant because I was good at what I was doing. But I technically somewhat was handicapping myself. It wasn't because of the right people that I connected with. And that one lady is the one that kind of helped me. And she really, like, set me down and kind of said, Javier, you're fucking amazing, but you need to learn how to talk to your audience. Like, they see you as a cocky, arrogant piece of shit, right? You're good. You're just cocky, arrogant, like nothing,
But we always
right?
had mutual respect.
But what I'm saying is, it took me that much time to realize it's better to be a student. You already hungry, like, you're good, but just listen, right? And I listen, like, trust me, now I listen. Anytime I'm in the right rooms, I'm quiet. I rather, like, hear you talk than hear myself talk. So, because if I'm hearing myself talk, why the hell am I in this room anyways? I'd rather be home, right? So, I mean, that would be like a huge, huge freaking advice: is dress well and be a student and just listen.
So you actually reminded me of a time that we did we were doing like a quarterly review, and I remember you went into one of those meetings and we were doing our individual presentations, and you went in the cocky route, and I remember that was like the start of like you becoming more of a student to the game and not thinking that you knew more than everybody else. And I had that same transformation myself. Do you remember that time that I'm talking about?
I remember that's the day I was ready to quit. I felt like I couldn't cross that. Yeah, I remember that. I was like, "Oh, I'm number one. I'm the best," something like that.
Yeah.
And they're like,
Because you were breaking some shit ton of records,
and
but
they
you
said, "What's
definitely got
number
humbled.
one?"
You got humbled that day. I remember.
Yeah, he's like, "Hey, we just gave you small goals. Like,
Yeah.
you had small goals." And I was like, "No, I did." Yeah, honestly, I didn't think I even spoke anymore. After that, I
Yeah.
was ready to resign. I felt so bad.
I saw a transformation in you from that very moment. And I feel like you and I started to develop a relationship, right? Because I had just become into that position. You had gotten promoted like right before me. And we kind of like knew of each other, but we didn't have a relationship. And I feel like that's when we started to develop a relationship, and we kind of piggybacked off of each other. We learned from each other. And I always had respect for you. And you definitely were somebody that I always told myself that I was going to keep in touch with. We've talked about doing podcasts before. Our careers, our business ventures have kind of gone a different route, but I feel like we're coming into that touching point now where we're starting to align and get things going. And I'm excited for, to have some conversations with you in the future. I think you and I can make some big differences for people that want to start businesses. You and I have a lot of experience, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show today. But do you have any parting words for people that really want to take the next step today?
Like, I'll tell you this. First thing, Robbie, I appreciate you having me on, right? I have all the respect in the world for you. I commend you. Like, I applaud you for everything you've done and where you're at now. I know a lot of your story, and the fact that you're still here, it's freaking amazing. Like, you're still not giving up and pushing forward, and you're doing it through helping other people, which that I even applaud more. So, kudos to you for that. Other than that, what I tell people is don't give up, look for the right mentors. Don't like, don't be sad for seeing these fake influencers that show they have all this stuff when in reality it's all fake. I met a lot of people online that will show that they have all these things and it's all rented, or they rented it for a day. It's fake, or they just happen to sit in the car and took a picture. So it's not real. The people that you think are rich they're not rich. The people, it's not real. Like, you don't get that wealthy that fast, right? Now, I'm not saying you can't go win the lottery, right? Go plug and play it. You might win it. But what I'm saying is, like, don't feel bad. Keep pushing forward. Your time will come as long as you keep pushing. Follow me, follow Robbie, and I obviously I post a lot. I post on social media, not often, but I do post, and I try to really be more instead of just showing my life, I'd rather speak my life, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, give us a follow, and I'd love to talk to more of your audience, even if it's on one-on-one basis or in the future on future podcasts.
Absolutely. My parting advice before I close this out is you're never going to be 100% ready. No matter how hard you try, there's never a better day to get started than today, because you're going to continuously find reasons to procrastinate and put it off. And then the next thing you know, you're quickly approaching 40 and your whole life has gone by. Don't be afraid to take the risk now. And Javier's got great advice. I've got great advice. That's all we've got for today. I want to thank you so much for coming on. You've got such a unique mind and such a great perspective on things, for sharing your honest and inspiring journey with everybody. It's powerful. And, I want to remind everybody that you can create your own path, and don't listen to what the haters are saying. If you'd like to learn how Javier can help you leap into, business ownership, you can send him an email. You can visit his Instagram. I'm going to post it right here on the screen for everybody to visit. Again, thank you, Javier. Next week, we're going to continue the conversation about protecting your health and peace in the workplace, but this time with the full crew back together. Greg and Jesse are going to be joining me, and we're going to have a special guest to talk about the hard truths about finding peace in a toxic workplace. That episode's going to be called From the Trenches, Protecting Your Health and Your Peace. You won't want to miss it. You guys have a great one. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, Hav.